Level 1. The Accidental Discovery. You picked up post office because someone left it on a train or you found it in a used bookstore for $3. You're expecting some boring literary fiction about mail carriers. Instead, you get Henley Chinaski talking about hangovers, terrible bosses, and how much he hates everything. First reaction? Wait, you're allowed to write like this? Bukowski breaks every rule you learned in English class. No flowery descriptions, no complex metaphors. Just raw honesty about being a loser and somehow making it sound profound. You're probably still in college or fresh out, maybe working some soul-crushing entry-level job. Reading about Chinaski's Postal Service nightmare feels like someone finally gets what it's like to be young and trapped in systems that don't care about you. At this level, you think Bukowski is just funny and rebellious. You're not wrong, but you're missing about 6 layers of complexity. Level 2. The edgelord phase. Now you've read Ham on Rye and Women, and you think you've discovered the coolest, most underground writer ever. You start quoting Bukowski in conversations, usually the most cynical, nihilistic lines you can find. Some people never go crazy. What truly horrible lives they must lead becomes your personal motto. You're that person bringing up Bukowski at parties, shocking people with stories about his drinking and womanizing like you personally invented countercultural literature. You buy a few more books, factotum, maybe Hollywood, and you're convinced that Bukowski's lifestyle is somehow aspirational. The drinking, the gambling, the string of relationships, and the disdain for conventional success. You think being self-destructive is the same thing as being authentic. Level 2 readers often try to copy Bukowski's writing style. Lots of short, choppy sentences about how much everything sucks. Results vary wildly, usually in the direction of pretentious garbage. Level 3, the lifestyle adoption. You're not just reading Bukowski anymore, you're trying to be Bukowski. This is a dangerous phase where you confuse his coping mechanisms with his philosophy. Maybe you start drinking more because that's what real writers do. Maybe you cultivate a deliberately shabby appearance because looking too put together is selling out. You definitely become more cynical in conversations, using Bukowski's worldview as justification for your own disappointments. The problem with level 3 is that you're copying the symptoms instead of understanding the disease. Bukowski wasn't cool because he was an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic who happened to write incredibly well about the experience. Big difference. You might start romanticizing poverty and failure as somehow more genuine than success. This is where a lot of people get stuck, using Bukowski as an excuse to avoid trying at anything because the system is rigged anyway, man. Level 3 readers love telling people about Bukowski's rejection letters, 60,000 of them before he got published. They use this as evidence that the world doesn't appreciate real talent, conveniently ignoring the part where he kept writing anyway. Level 4, the poetry discovery. Up until now, you've probably only read his novels. Then someone shows you Love is a Dog from Hell or The Days Run Away Like Wild Horses Over the Hills, and your brain explodes. Bukowski's poetry hits different. The novels are great, but the poetry is where he really stripped everything down to pure emotion. No plot to hide behind, no characters to blame, just raw human experience condensed into perfect little brutal packages. There is a loneliness in this world so great that you can see it in the slow movement of the hands of a clock. Lines like this make you realize that Bukowski wasn't just some drunk guy complaining. He was documenting a very specific kind of modern alienation that most people feel but can't articulate. Level 4 is where you start understanding that Bukowski's cynicism comes from disappointment, not indifference. He expected more from people, from life, from himself. The anger is just love with nowhere to go. You probably start reading his poetry before bed, which is either deeply comforting or deeply depressing, depending on your current mental state. Level 5, the context understanding. Now you're reading biographies, watching documentaries, learning about Los Angeles in the 60s and 70s. You understand that Bukowski wasn't just writing about universal human experiences. He was writing about a very specific time and place and class position. The post-war American dream was supposed to lift everyone up, but Bukowski was writing about the people it left behind. The factory workers, the postal employees, the racetrack regulars, the people who didn't fit into suburbia's neat little boxes. You start seeing connections to other writers, John Fante's influence,
the Beat Generation connections, how Bukowski fit into and rebelled against literary traditions. Maybe you read some of his letters and realize how thoughtful he actually was about his craft. Level 5 readers know that Bukowski worked incredibly hard at appearing effortless. Those simple, conversational poems took years of practice to perfect. The dirty realism style that seems so natural was actually revolutionary for its time. You also start understanding his complicated relationship with fame. He spent decades in obscurity, then suddenly became this cult figure. The tension between wanting recognition and maintaining authenticity runs through all his later work.
Level 6, the empathy phase. This is where you stop seeing Bukowski as a character and start seeing him as a person. A deeply flawed, often terrible person, but a person nonetheless. You recognize the cycles, the self-sabotage, the pushing people away right when things get good, the way he used alcohol and women and gambling to avoid dealing with deeper issues. You see how his childhood trauma shaped everything that came after. But you also see the moments of genuine tenderness. His relationship with his daughter Marina, his late-in-life marriage to Linda Lee, the way he wrote about animals and underdogs with such compassion. Level 6 readers can hold two thoughts simultaneously. Bukowski was often a terrible person to be around, and he created something beautiful out of that terribleness. You don't excuse his behavior, but you understand how someone so damaged could also be so insightful. You start reading him less for rebellion and more for recognition. Those moments when he captures exactly how loneliness feels, or how crushing it is to watch your dreams slowly die, or how beautiful ordinary people can be when you really pay attention. Level 7, the integration. At level 7, Bukowski becomes just one voice in your larger understanding of literature and life. You can appreciate what he did without needing to live like him or defend every aspect of his worldview. You understand that his greatest achievement wasn't being a rebel or a drunk or a misanthrope. It was finding a way to transform pain into art without losing the rawness that made the pain meaningful in the first place. Level 7 readers often find themselves returning to specific poems or passages during difficult times, not because they want to wallow in misery, but because Bukowski had this unique ability to make you feel less alone in your worst moments. You probably recommend him selectively now, not to everyone, and not as a lifestyle guide, but to people who you think might need to hear that it's okay to struggle, okay to fail, okay to be disappointed by life and still keep going. You've integrated the Bukowski lesson. Authenticity doesn't mean being deliberately crude or shocking. It means being honest about your experience, even when that experience is ugly or embarrassing or doesn't fit into neat categories. The final level of being a Bukowski reader is understanding that he wasn't teaching you how to live. He was showing you that even the worst life can be worth documenting. And sometimes that's enough. Every Bukowski reader goes through some version of these levels, though not always in order and not always completely. The beauty of his work is that it meets you where you are, whether you're 19 and angry at the world or 45 and tired of pretending everything's fine. Whatever level you're at, remember, Bukowski kept writing until the day he died. That's probably the most important lesson of all.